All right. Okay, now it's time for the main course.
So we are at, what the title of this Beatles lesson is?
Revolver.
Revolver.
And the title, Revolver, is perfect because we're talking about like the Beatles change over into like it's so synergistic because the Beatles were connected with what was going on in society and the world. You know, they were almost like the mouthpiece for change in the 60s. And Revolver, you know, suggests revolution. It's a pun on of course, the record revolving, all that stuff, you know.
Okay.
Plus the violent image of a revolver. I mean, the Beatles were, you know, they were trying to, at this point, like, they didn't want the standard album covers. They were getting really creative, and they wanted more artistic control over what was going on. That's why they got Klaus Voormann to do the drawing for the cover. And I think it was Beatles, I forget what record it was, Yesterday and Today or something. It was the controversial album cover with the baby dolls. They were with their heads lopped off, and they were dressed as butchers, and you know, it was really kind of, they had that kind of dark side, you know. Great album title though. It's really perfect.
Where does this fall kind of in the pantheon? What have we had before it?
Well, it was Rubber Soul right before this.
And right before that?
Well, this is the British releases, so Help, then Beatles for Sale, which was actually Beatles 6 and Beatles 65, Hard Day's Night before that.
So when we get up to this, is there any kind of a movement away from what had previously been kind of commercial hit sort of things they had?
Well, they were under contract to release an A and B side single, well, obviously, for every record they produced. So in this case it was Yellow Submarine, Eleanor Rigby maybe, was the A side, B side.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see what happens in Sgt. Pepper's. They got kind of screwed on that one because their contract with the record company ruined their concept album. They were in the middle of trying to create this concept album, and basically the two songs that they were developing for that, which was Strawberry Fields, and they were kind of sister songs. Strawberry Fields was Lennon, and Penny Lane was McCartney.
Okay.
And you can start to hear, like, with the psychedelic thing, I think I mentioned once before, there was kind of this longing for going back to the past when, you know, they were looking back on childhood, and I think that the LSD kind of exacerbated that kind of longing for, you know, childhood comfort and ease and that sort of thing. So you could see the beginnings of that, and that became a very hippie thing in general, doing this kind of kid songs almost, you know.
Okay.
And we could see the beginnings of that. On this record we have Yellow Submarine, which kind of exemplifies that style of kind of a children's song, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And of course McCartney was the guy behind that one, there's no doubt. I mean, that's him all the way.
Okay.
In fact, you can really, really see on this record the three individualities of the three songwriters. It starts with Taxman. And this is, it's all based on seventh chord, so we have the blues element. And of course, a seventh chord by itself, just sitting there without the blues notes, but just is a mixolydian right away. It's that same mixolydian mode I was telling you about. And so we're starting off with that. It's kind of a combination of blues and mixolydian. You can like separate out the two, but you can also meld them together. Okay.
So what if we were talking about a key? What key is this in?
Well, the root chord is D7.
Okay.
Now, when you hear, like in other words, here's a D7. There are two scales I could play over this. One is the blues sound. And then there's a more plain vanilla mixolydian, which sits right on. There are no notes that are blue notes or anything like that. It's just like a regular scale. Okay. All right. All right. In this case, it's more of a blues accentuation because you have the
Right.
all right, which is that is part of the blues scale. Okay.
Okay.
So Taxman. Oh, this is interesting too. I mean, when you look at Harrison, there are a few things about his. This is his song. He wrote this, and there's a few things about Harrison that are kind of interesting, contradictory, and weird. One is that he had a sense of the sour in music. And we'll see that later on. And I Want to Tell You, he liked these kind of like weird dissonances that kind of soured the milk a little bit. You know, kind of made the song a little odd to the ear. I think, again, that was partially because he was competing with Lennon and McCartney. He was trying to do something different than what they were doing, but still as creative, you know. Mm-hmm. So, in any case, also the other factor about him is that he was like the big spiritual moralist, you know. He was really dissed for doing Within You, Without You on the Sgt. Pepper's.
Oh, yeah?
Because it's like, you know, he's separating like there's us and you, you know. We were talking about the space between us all and the people who hide themselves behind the wall of illusion. Do they really see, you know, this sort of thing? Like they're all screwed up, but us spiritual people that see, we're cool. But on the same token, he writes a song like Taxman or Piggies where he's complaining about materialism and money, but yet, well, actually, Piggies, he's complaining about material, but Taxman, he's complaining, I'm not getting enough money because of the Taxman. So he really was a materialist, you know. He was very concerned about money and things. He was probably the best dresser in the Beatles. He had the finest clothing. You know?
Really?
All right, so Taxman, the meat and potatoes of this song, it's a D7, a C7, a G7, and a C7, which is the same exact chords of She Said, She Said, except he uses major chords and Harrison uses seventh chords. So instead of this, it's on the Taxman, Taxman. John Lennon sings, she said.
Oh, okay.
And Harrison is. So harkens kind of back to the earlier Beatles too, that kind of bluesy sound, you know.
Okay.
So he takes the lick. There's the sharp 9 chord, what they call the Hendrix chord. They exploited this earlier, but Harrison just loved the sound of it, so he adds it in. All right.
Okay.
Takes the lick. All right, so let me tell you how it will be. Blah 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 blah. 'Cause I'm the tax man. That's the chorus. Yeah, I'm the tax man. And it's all based. That's the whole song. There's a slight change. If you drive a truck, I'll tax the street. If you try to that's just between D7 and C, but it's the same chord structure pretty much. The solo was done by Paul McCartney.
Oh, is that right?
Right. I'll bring this little interesting fact up later in Tomorrow Never Knows. They're experimenting with tape loops now. They're doing all sorts of weird. They're searching so hard, and basically this is the album that was the response to the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. Yes.
Had they visited India by this point or no?
To tell the truth, I don't think so. I don't know, but I don't think so. I mean, they actually visited India pretty later on in their career, like around late. You know, Sexy Sadie from the White Album. That's a long time later than this. Was a reference to the Maharishi.
Oh, okay.
Sexy Sadie was a song about like Lennon was disgusted by him at this point because he tried to seduce the women in their entourage, and he felt like the guy was a hypocrite. My personal feeling is if you're a guru and women want to drop at your feet, that's cool. I don't know why they make such a big deal about sex, frankly. Politicians, you know, Clinton, oh my God, he had sex.
And that was Vinnie Jim Jones Caggiano.
Yeah. Super hippie. All right, so we got Taxman. Let me see, what other words can I say? There's nothing much else I could say about this, except it's an awesome song. This, Steve, harkens me back to there's a change in my life at this point. I had moved from my grandparents' house. My parents moved to Deer Park, Long Island, and I had a friend across the street, this Puerto Rican dude, whose parents were, what do you call them? Watchtower, what do you call that religion?
Oh, Jehovah's Witnesses.
They were Jehovah's Witnesses. And he had an electric guitar. He played a little bit. And around just probably about a year after this record was released, I started a band with this kid. And we were doing, like, all these songs.
Oh, really?
Anyway, so we got Eleanor Rigby.
Who wrote this?
This is a Paul McCartney All the Way song.
Okay.
They were trying to write a song on one chord, and I read in one book that this song is ostensibly one chord. It is not one chord. It is definitely, it's an A minor to F major with passing lines. So I wouldn't categorize this as a one chord song. All right, so we're on Eleanor Rigby. And it's not a one chord song. What we have, it's in the key of A minor. And it goes to F here for the opening, F to A minor, and it's an Aeolian thing. Hints of Penny Lane in this.
Yeah.
Right? They get this is a line again, okay? And they're very aware of the line. George Martin, actually McCartney this time around volunteered George Martin to write strings for this.
Oh.
Also, McCartney, this is pre-LSD, but I had heard a story that he had a revelation on acid about songwriting. First time he smoked pot with Dylan, he thought he found the meaning of life was the number 7 or something like that. It's something really weird. I always wanted to know what McCartney's psychedelic revelation on songwriting was, though, because he had become so, like, prolific. It was amazing to me. He developed a new perspective somehow of what a song is and how it can be presented. Eleanor Rigby, he said, was the turning point for him. I saw in an interview where they asked him, you know, like when the change was happening and something was going on with your style, was there a significant song that was the pivot? And it's perfect, Revolver, you know.
Yeah.
The pivot point was Eleanor Rigby, he said.
Huh.
And an amazing portrait painted here. And two of these songs, two of the McCartney songs, For No One and Eleanor Rigby, he has a kind of cold distance. He's just reporting the sadness, but he's reporting it with a kind of
There's a journalistic,
like a journalistic thing.
Distance, yeah.
It's almost like a documentarial look at this. And this is a, you know, this is a time when there was this kind of them-us separation beginning to happen between the hippies and you know, the establishment, including anyone over 30.
Yeah. Was there a real Eleanor Rigby?
No, but he, as far as I know, there wasn't a real person he was writing about, but he did take the name Eleanor.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to remember now. One of the names he got out of a phone book, and the other name he got from like his childhood teacher from childhood or something.
Oh,
like that.
okay.
So you get. The A minor shape here, but I'm adding a note here.
Right.
And then again, so you get, this is what I said like before. I was talking earlier in the videos, I was talking about you take a minor chord and you get a song like Stairway to Heaven or Latin music. All across the same minor chord, this note is moving around.
I see, okay.
In the case of Eleanor Rigby, it's moving around a whole step, then a half step, then a whole step, so it's... It's very unusual, actually. It's an unexpected, like, this is not a cliche movement. this is,
Okay.
you know. Whenever I am away, you know, the Rascal
Right,
song.
right,
There's
yeah.
plenty of songs that have that. But what McCartney did was different. Very nice movement. All against the A minor chord.
Huh.
All right. So that's Eleanor Rigby. Beautiful portrait. The lyrics are amazing. I mean, the creativity of the lyrics and how he portrays these empty lives of these empty people is just fabulous. You know, wearing a face that she keeps in a jar by the door. All right. What I've heard about I'm Only Sleeping is, even though Lennon was heavily tripping at this point and having all sorts of wild revelations, I'm sure. He may have dipped into a little bit of heroin at this point.
Huh.
As one critic suggests, one journalist suggested, because I'm Only Sleeping is just about being in that dream world, you know. It's funny, I was on the documentary I referred to you called Composing the Beatles Songbook.
Mm-hmm.
One journalist said, you know, I listened to I'm Only Sleeping and I thought, you know, the metaphor must be that humanity is asleep and blah, 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 you know, all this, he put all these philosophical ramifications into it. And Lennon said, well, actually it was just about what it's saying. It's just about being sleepy and, you know, that state. And how brilliant this song is. All right. Okay, now it's time for the main course.
So we are at, what the title of this Beatles lesson is?
Revolver.
Revolver.
And the title, Revolver, is perfect because we're talking about like the Beatles change over into like the sort of, it's so synergistic because the Beatles were connected with what was going on in society and the world. You know, they were almost like the mouthpiece for change in the 60s. And Revolver, you know, suggests revolution. It's a pun on of course, the record revolving, all that stuff, you know.
Okay.
Plus the violent image of a revolver. I mean, the Beatles were, you know, they were trying to, at this point, like, they didn't want the standard album covers. They were getting really creative, and they wanted more artistic control over what was going on. That's why they got Klaus Voormann to do the drawing for the cover. And I think it was Beatles, I forget what record it was, Yesterday and Today or something. It was the controversial album cover with the baby dolls. They were with their heads lopped off, and they were dressed as butchers, and you know, it was really kind of, they had that kind of dark side, you know. Great album title though. It's really perfect.
Where does this fall kind of in the pantheon? What have we had before it?
Before, well, it was Rubber Soul right before this.
And right before that?
Well, this is the British releases, so Help, then Beatles for Sale, which was actually Beatles 6 and Beatles 65, Hard Day's Night before that.
So when we get up to this, is there any kind of a movement away from what had previously been kind of commercial hit sort of things they had?
Well, they were under contract to release an A and B side single, well, obviously, for every record they produced. So in this case it was Yellow Submarine, Eleanor Rigby maybe, was the A side, B side.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see what happens in Sgt. Pepper's. They got kind of screwed on that one because their contract with the record company ruined their concept album. They were in the middle of trying to create this concept album, and basically the two songs that they were developing